inferior view, some of the things we can see are frontal lobes, temporal lobes, the cerebellar hemispheres, and then the pons and the medulla oblongata. Here is the fiber tract on each side for cranial nerve number 1. So these are the olfactory tracts. Right here we can see the last bit of cranial nerve number 2, optic nerve, as it heads into the optic chiasm. Right? The chiasm is the X, since chi is the Greek letter for X. And then the posterior legs of that X are optic tracts. So we go from peripheral nervous system structures to central nervous system structures here. Right behind the optic chiasm, just posterior there, we should have the infundibulum leaving the hypothalamus, and then we would have a pituitary gland here, which would sit in the sella turcica. And inferior to that, we can see mammillary bodies, these two here. We've got cerebral peduncles. There's oculomotor nerve, that little spot right there. So trochlear nerve, trigeminal nerve, abducens, facial, vestibulocochlear, glossopharyngeal, vagus, accessory, and hypoglossal. You can also see the middle cerebellar peduncle, this little white triangle here, which is bringing information to and from the cerebellum on this side. Same as there. Now we can see pyramids, olives, so as far as some separations, we've got left cerebral hemisphere, right cerebral hemisphere separated by longitudinal fissure. This deep space here is the fissure. We can see the lateral sulcus, which is separating the frontal lobe from the temporal lobe, and also the parietal lobe from the temporal lobe. And then transverse fissure, which is separating the cerebrum from the cerebellum. Pretty much temporal and occipital lobes from cerebellum here. And that'll go all the way around the brain. We can also see a central sulcus right here with a precentral gyrus, which is the posterior most part of the frontal lobe. It's our primary motor cortex. And behind the central sulcus is the post-central gyrus, which is primary somatosensory cortex. If we look at the mid-sagittal section, we can see the cingulate gyrus, corpus callosum. We can see some of the fornix and the septum pellucidum. This pink strip here is meant to represent the choroid plexus of the third ventricle. There is choroid plexus in all 4 ventricles, but since we're on the mid-sagittal view, we're only going to see third and fourth ventricle. Choroid plexus is what's making cerebrospinal fluid in each of those ventricles. So it's filtering blood, and then the ependymal cells are making CSF and secreting it into this third ventricle space. This region here is going to be the thalamus, and here hypothalamus. We'll see the anterior commissure and the posterior commissure right there, the more middle bump. Those two, along with corpus callosum, are commissural fiber tracts, so white matter where information is being shared between left and right cerebral hemispheres. Here in the middle, this brown spot is the intermediate mass, or the interthalamic adhesion, and that in people who have one, since it's not present in all of us, connects the left half of the thalamus to the right half of the thalamus. So our posterior commissure was here. Right above that was pineal gland. And then below that is the corpora quadrigemina with a superior colliculus and an inferior colliculus on each half. This would be transverse fissure. And then back here we see cerebellum. The white matter of the cerebellum is the arbor vitae, or the tree of life. And the leaves on that tree, which are the gray matter pieces, are called folia. And folia are the equivalent of gyri on the cerebrum. It's just that they're smaller folds. And then the folia of the cerebellum are separated by small spaces, which are also sulci, just like a sulcus in the cerebrum. From our third ventricle connecting to the fourth ventricle is the cerebral aqueduct, that little space, pons, medulla.